No, I'm good. Mhm. All right. Okay, this is Ida. Hello. Hello, everyone. Looks like everyone's here. Yes. Okay. So we will go ahead and call the meeting to order at 4:01. Roll call, please.
This is Jackie speaking. Megan Clausen,
Here in Denver.
Jessica Lee, Pete Lee, Michael Stone,
Michael Stone here, Boulder.
Dahlia Casillas, George Welsh,
George Welsh here, a little bit south of Alamosa at the moment.
and Ida Wilding.
Here, Colorado Springs. Okay. Thank you. This is Ida. Thank you. So now we will split that 4 o'clock will be the finance committee, and then 5 o'clock will go into the legislative committee. So I'm not exactly sure how we want to work this out. Do we want those who are on that legislative committee to come back at 5, and who's ever on the finance committee stay now at 4? Is that the plan, do you think? Or is that right? Oh yeah, Tara.
This is Tara. Good afternoon, everyone. So some people will be joining both committees tonight, and some will just be joining one. I know Dahlia is not able to join tonight, and Jess, I'm not sure of. And then Pete Lee will only be able to join the legislative committee. So I did go ahead and plan to start with the finance committee, finish up about 4:55, wrap that up, and then if anyone has to leave, that's fine. And then Pete will join us and we will roll call again for the second part. And so we have accurate roll call.
Okay, this is Ida. So yes, thank you for clarifying that. So now I think we will go ahead with our finance committee. And yes, so it's me, you, and Beth is here, right? So yes, and then Megan, George, you can either stay and participate. It doesn't, either way, or Michael as well. Michael? So, yeah, oh, sorry, I thought you were about to say something, but thank you. And so we have that, yeah, we have our controller here. Beth is with us. So thank you for joining us this evening. We need your expertise, to answer some of our questions, all of that. And so then, yeah, I think anything you want to start with? Either Michael, Megan, anyone? Want to start or? Oh yeah. Okay, Tara.
This is Tara. So I was thinking we could start with reviewing. Last month we had identified 4 possible areas of focus for this committee. And then after talking with Beth, she had one more thing she'd like to go ahead and discuss related to our
Okay.
financial standard for CEASD, our accreditation process. So now we have 5 areas of focus. I'm thinking maybe we go ahead and start with the CEASD standard. And Beth has already established a committee to review that accreditation standard in regards to finance. And she would like to see if there are any board members who may be willing to join that committee, just one person, one board member, if they would be willing to join that committee. Beth, do you want to add, comments about what that looks like, the commitment, what those meetings look like, what you would need from that board member? I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, this is Beth signing. Yes, thanks for having me here. So, well, we had our first accreditation team's finance meeting 2 weeks ago, and we are going to have our second meeting tomorrow morning. I'm involved as my accounting team will be there. A person from outreach, the outreach department is on the team as well. So I would really like to have, one person from the board involved in this team just to kind of oversee it, the different pieces about the finance portion, because we will have to write up a narrative and for that financial standard. And it would be just really nice to have a board member just there to, give feedback, to review certain things. Really, that would be all I would ask of that board member. And the team meets every other Tuesday. I mean, we'll be starting tomorrow because we do have to wrap up everything by December 4th. So that does not give us a lot of time because Tara herself would need time to review everything at that point, excuse me, before it's submitted to CESD. Yeah, Megan.
Beth and Tara, can you guys talk a little bit more about that accreditation standard? What are we trying to achieve or what do we have to demonstrate?
I mean,
Yeah, no,
this
you
is
go ahead.
this is best signing. So I do have there are 12 sub standards under the finance standard. So some bullet points there. And let me see, try how would I summarize this? Like, do we have like financial policies that are in accordance to best practices? And do the other standards, so the governance, the leadership, that prudent control, um, the running of that, showing levels of revenue, spending appropriately, balancing out appropriately. Do we have enough things to account? A lot of assets, liabilities, different things. For policies, we would have to go over state statute, our accounting manual, all of these different things in place just to make sure that we have all of our processes, our system, and everything shown to make sure that we're meeting this goal. And so through this 12 standards, substandards, it's not too bad. There's just a few gaps that I'm noticing that we need to address. One of those is related to developing active foundations. And that's one thing that has come up with the board as well. And that's something that we would like to work on moving forward to develop that foundation. And I could definitely email you the standard That way you would have full visibility on that. Okay. Yeah, Megan.
So it sounds like it's mostly just pulling documentation together and then for the gaps, putting together policies that reflect that we do meet the standard. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, Michael.
Thank you, Michael speaking. Just has there ever been any challenges with achieving the standards, or any feedback that has been given by CEASD?
This is oops, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. This is Beth signing. It's about time. Really, I wish I had more time to, I mean, I have been working on an internal accounting manual because when I first started in my current role, the accounting manual was very basic, very simplified. There was only 30 pages. It wasn't a lot of information. Since then, I've added up to like over 100 pages. I add procedures, SOPs, some very specific tasks are in there, payroll procedures and processes, procurement process, all of those things. I've been trying to do as much as I can to show that, yes, we have something documented on the record there. So my goal this month is to really update that manual and be done with it by that December 4th date. And then that's been my challenge. And this is Ida. Also, I noticed like electronic, like it can be like you've moved into electronic payroll accounting system. So maybe that will help pass that standard as well. That new one. Yeah. Any other, or are there any volunteers to be on that? I know we only have half of the board members here, but is anybody really motivated and wanting to be? And you said you don't meet every week, you meet every 2 weeks, right? Was it the third, like, is this your second time? Oh, okay, so it'll be your second time tomorrow. So just needing someone to oversee, maybe review, checking that something wasn't overlooked. Yeah, Beth. Oh, yeah, Beth, this is Beth signing. And since we do meet Thursday morning at 9, I realized that maybe, you wouldn't be able to show up on campus, but I'd be more than happy to email, maybe change the meeting to Zoom or share what the process is looking like, what we've done, all the progress we've done, the narratives for your feedback. I mean, that's definitely, I'm open to that, however it needs to work. And I did forget to add, Tara has sent out a survey to all staff for feedback related to all of the standards. And I haven't received those results quite yet, but that's another thing that team can take a look at, see what's in there, see some of the strengths, where the gaps are based on those results as well. This is Ida. And so you said Thursdays at 9. So that means tomorrow. Okay. And then again in 2 weeks. So meeting every 2 weeks. So Thursday, I mean, I could go, if nobody else, I mean, I could definitely, I know, yeah, that I'm closer to campus. Yeah. But Megan,
Sorry, before we move on from this, can you remind us of the other areas? I just want to think about where my skills might be best used.
so you mean all 12 standards? You would want to know like what they're called, or what do you mean? Like all the standards just in general, or what are you asking for?
No, so in my notes, we had talked about like looking for donations and grants, trying to increase staff pay. I'm just trying to remember like this, our finance group, where were we trying to focus?
Oh, right, right, right. Okay, yeah. Tara?
This is Tara. Yes. So what we had discussed last month related to this committee is that we had identified 4 potential areas of focus, which were staff compensation, operating budget increase, establishing a foundation, more actively seeking donations, grants, etc. Also goes with that third one. Just more financial opportunities with a foundation, perhaps, or donations or grants. So that's the third one. And then the fourth one is potential program expansion. I think we talked about outreach, possibly that expansion, how, financially we could do that. So those are the 4 things that we talked about last October at our last meeting. I do think the one where I see some overlap with Beth, your financial standard, is the foundation part, because we don't have one right now. So I do see some potential overlap there where we may be scored low for accreditation because we are not actively seeking those opportunities for donations. We've been much more passive, and we're, lucky we just recently got one a few weeks ago for a few $1,000s, and but we didn't actively seek it because we don't have a formal foundation in place. So that's one area of the financial standard that will probably be scored low or lower.
And this is Ida. So just clarifying those 4, we plan to work on those throughout, but you're asking just maybe a short couple of meetings before this timeline in December, right? That to join that team. And then we would continue with these 4 topics like the grants, setting up the foundation, all of those things, the staff compensation, those things are ongoing throughout the year that we'll be working on, but this is just a couple of meetings. So I think even if you, would be working in those other 4 areas, if you wanted to join this, it would be a couple of meetings before that December 4th timeframe. Okay, this is Ida. So I'm guessing, I would just, go to those next 2 meetings and then wrap that up for that standard. And but thanks for your time, Beth, for being here. Thank you. Any other questions for Beth? Anything? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah, Megan.
Sorry, Beth, before you go, just thinking about these other categories that we just talked about. If we're talking about like staff increases, for your purposes, are there any restrictions on where that money comes from? Or like would it be more of like making the case to the JBC that more funds should be available for pay increases?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so those 4 categories. Okay, wait a second. Okay, there's different funding pots like that. We have 4 different, there's like classifieds, it's just really based on what the governor gives us for those. And if the governor gives classifieds, then our non-classified group that are not tied with D11 will get the same thing. And the D11, well, we are lucky that we have been able to, help that D11 group keep up with those pay increases. So whatever D11 gets, our staff gets. However, we always recognize that yes, that D11 group must have specific certifications, those very specialized skills. As far as D11 goes, that's just very general public school. They don't have those requirements. So we require more. Therefore, that group classification should be paid more than those teachers who aren't required to have those additional skills. So I think that would really is something that we would need to address with the legislators. And maybe I could be part of the legislator group and just throw that out there to them as well. And then the fourth, yeah, I think and I just, yeah, we always can ask for more money, but I just, hate to say this right now, but it is not a great time to be asking for more money just with the current, state budget and all of that. Yeah. Mhm. Tara.
This is Tara. I think to add to what Beth is saying, we have talked about keeping that D11 as a baseline and a starting point just to ensure, because what could happen is unintentionally us becoming lower than D11. So keeping that just as our minimum, in terms of what could we compensate above that. Because these are very specialized skills that our staff have. So maybe a percentage of an increase on top of that to ensure that they don't. I mean, and really D11 is a real safety net for us. Pretty much they have to approve it because it's in statute. So they have no choice. So it doesn't matter what the budget year looks like. It could be awful, but they are always going to approve a minimum match with D11. So my recommendation is that we keep that, but look at a percentage on top of that for those specialized skills. I think that's our best approach. More and more districts for their district specialized staff, especially, in terms of special ed, special services, school psychologists, SLPs, TODs, TVIs. They are already doing something similar within their own districts. They're already adding that percentage on top of it because they can't fill those positions. It's seriously hard to fill those positions. And it's the same for us. It's just that all of our teachers and student service providers are all considered severely hard to fill positions. Not just hard to fill, but severely hard to fill positions.
This is Ida. So I'm wondering, yes, and then I'll turn over to you, Michael, but let me ask, so that percentage, that compensation for those specialized skills, where would that money come from? Where would we be asking? We would keep that baseline, but where do we go to fight for that? Where could that come from?
Yeah, you or me, Beth.
Oh, or Tara.
Okay, Tara. So that's going to require a request of the JBC. So Beth and I have been talking about the possibility of, well, I think first we have to, explain to them why. Gather some data, compare it to other districts in terms of what they're doing, talk about filling those positions. DPA, they are showing a severe, that they are severely hard to fill. So DPA, they are doing this. Excuse me, the data shows every year that these are hard to fill positions. And so I think we gather data and we could also consider going forward with our regular budget request. And it will be in two parts. Part one would be, regular match D11, our standard budget request that happens annually. But then add a second part to it, an additional request for a percentage increase on top of. That's potentially one strategy that we could use. But regardless, it's going to require a JBC approval.
Yes, Michael?
Thank you. Michael speaking. A couple things. First, uh, this area alone was almost the sole reason we were going to have this committee. This was just such a beyond essential issue that coupled with creative funding. I mean, those were the two biggest highlights when we first talked about this, and we also knew that there was going to be some crossover between this committee and the legislative, and this area is definitely going to be that area where there's going to be crossover, and it'll be great for us, those of us that are attending both, to be able to educate the people who weren't on this issue, because it's going to be a cornerstone issue for us, and how creative and clearly this committee, what we could do is create several different scenarios, and then perhaps an informal vote as to what would be the best when we make that presentation to the JBC. And then lastly, one statement about the timing of asking for funds. We shouldn't be afraid to ask during down economies or down situations. Because what's going to happen is when things change and things turn around, and there's a budget surplus and everything, everybody and their mothers are going to be trying to receive every dollar. It'll actually be arguably more competitive. Um, we shouldn't be afraid to ask during challenging times like this and get ourselves into the queue, and then reinforce it when the funds are perhaps there. We might prepare ourselves for a little disappointment in the short term. However, setting the stage for a long term would be it could be very beneficial. I just want to try to add that, and also one of the reasons why there's a board, so we can definitely assist with that, and hopefully relieve stress, with amongst the staff and in other areas. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And this is Ida. Yes. I'm really excited for this, that we're like taking action and trying to use our skills, our network of people to really get this going. Yeah, it's great. Oh, either one of you? Yeah.
No,
Beth?
Beth, you go.
Okay, Beth.
This is Beth. Okay, I just wanted to add, Michael, to your comment. I so appreciate your comment. I I I do want to say I want to think about how we can gather data. I do notice, many of our teaching positions had been vacant for such a long time, and we use that, if we use that data to show how long these positions have been vacant, like our school psychologist, for example, at the deaf school, took us 2 years. That is a glaring example of the severe issue. And we've been hiring, if you will, new teachers fresh out of college, like green teachers, if you will, because we're having a hard time finding veteran teachers out there. I mean, yes, it's nice. It's great to have new green teachers, but we need those veteran teachers too in order to help mentor those green teachers. Um, and we do have, again, many of those brand new teachers that can, well, it can lead to more work for other staff. So if we can show, experience
Yeah.
of all of our teachers, the statistics related to that, that shows something as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there before I forget.
Yes, yes, definitely. Michael?
Thank you. Michael speaking again. This is the sole reason why this was. I mean, literally, this topic alone could cover everything. I mean, we're so aware of the not the attrition for these incredibly skilled teachers, especially as you said. And I like the way that you stated veteran teachers. It's there's so many layers there, and I think that ideally, if we can use this committee to make this case, and point out all the challenges around this, and it list everything that you just talked about, and then of course it'll set the basis for our ask and how we best do this. And then something that that we've talked about internally, which is we'll also not make a solution in our case. This is what we believe is our need and so forth. Those vacancies that you talked about are just incredible data points. And then, of course, just using just this statistical data with attrition nationally, and then other like schools. And if this state would like to set the standard in education, literally have put our money where our mouth is, if you will, in this particular case. But I think it'll be when we actually sit down and organize this, really list all of the challenges, and then we'll come up with those solutions. And I hope that in all of our notes, we'll put down what was just stated with respect to those vacancies, and then the actual statistics with losing veteran teachers and what that impact is on our student body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And this is Ida. Yeah, again, this kind of overlaps a little bit with the legislative and the finance committee. And I think we can gather that data and figure out how much the state is spending on interpreters, on audiologists, on audio description and braille lists, all of that. How much, is the state spending in mainstream classrooms? And instead, can we make CSDB the hub for deaf and blind education? So thinking of all of that, we are the experts. We already have them here. Those subject experts are here. Yep. Subject matter experts. They're here, and they're providing a critical role for the state. So I think we could save a lot of money for the state if, invest, in the students here. So I think, I'm not sure where this falls, which committee, but I'm wondering if our lobbyists, they can find out that information for us. They can get that data, figure out how much the state is spending on all of those, and, go from there. Tara?
This is Tara. I do have a meeting set with our lobbyists next Monday, November 10th. So I'll have a few things to discuss with them, but I will talk with them about how we could get that data and information.
Megan?
I think some other important data to collect and use is maybe we can get some info from Department of Voc Rehab to say, like, if our students do get high quality instruction and then they graduate and they can go on to be independent contributing members of society, that it's less of a financial burden on the state and they're contributing to the economy. That always speaks volumes.
Yep. Oh, yes. Yep. Definitely.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get us stuck on this topic. And Beth, I'm sure you need to go, but just in thinking about where I might spend my efforts, I'm very interested in this area.
No, I'm good. I'm good. This is Ida. Yes, no, thank you so much. I totally agree. It helps to show those actual numbers, and if we produce those independent, uh, citizens, then yes, those are really important numbers to show. That's a good one. Good point. Tara?
This is Tara. I'm curious, are there any other ideas that you all have for strategies for the compensation part? I mean, that one idea is just to keep the D11 request with an additional percentage on top, whatever that would be. But are there other ideas that you all have?
This is Ida. I was thinking, I have been thinking about this for such a long time, the possibility of tying it to the legislator, Congress, having the lobbyist, really start to recognize if referring students to us, instead of like their home department or their home school districts, that, everything would be in one central place. We would provide, dorms even, we could include athletics, sports, extracurricular activities, they would get, the whole amount of their money's worth, instead of asking each district having to ask for, money for those. I think we could separate it and show in Maryland, that school works directly with the governor's office, for the budget. There's not any type of school district that they follow or anything like that. But, a lot of times there's a battle and we're getting pulled down because of this whole thing with the district, but if us being the only hub in the state, maybe they would recognize that the benefit there, again, as more legislative perhaps. But I think how we could quickly get that additional increase, I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't know. That's just one strategy to try to impress upon them. Anyone else? Yeah, Michael?
Thank you, Michael speaking. Ida, that was really huge, suggesting what Maryland is doing, and I wonder if we can find out what other states are doing. Um, I have a feeling that it's unique that we are tied to a public school district, given all of the special needs and that we have, and not over and beyond. But I'd be curious to see what it would take for us to, and gosh, I'm happy to do this as well, is to contact other like schools and find out exactly how that is being dealt with, and perhaps some of these solutions have already been, if there's precedent, um, starting from there. And I think that would be great, in addition to the other idea that's on the table, which I think is very good. Does anyone know exactly what the history is of why we are tied to District 11, when that happened, how long it's been, and perhaps having that history might be also very beneficial to suggesting other ideas.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, Tara?
This is Tara. I know some very surface level history. I think it was, I want to say around 2009-ish, is when they made that change. I think, well, my understanding is that before they made that legislative change, CSDB was not competitive with other local school districts and their pay. We did have our own pay scale, and my understanding is that it was much lower. But I mean, if that's accurate, what that actually was, I'm not sure. But in order to be able to become competitive with local public school districts, I think that was the intention of
Oh,
it.
gotcha.
But why they picked D11 is, again, my understanding is because that district is within where CSDB physically is located. So the campus lives within D11 boundaries, even though many of our staff don't live within D11. Many of them live in various parts of the community, things like that. That's my understanding in terms of the why, but
Uh, yeah, Michael
Yeah,
again.
Michael?
It may, I guess it's almost superfluous that it happens to be District 11. Being tied to any district is really the issue, not specifically District 11. It's almost, if we put that out there that it's specifically District 11, we're selling ourselves, we're putting ourselves into a corner, because then we want to figure out why we're tied to any district and we're not just a standalone institution. Being the only state-run school, it should be kind of an easy ask for us to be separated. And, obviously we through discussions, we can understand what that means. And given, I believe, Ida, your mention of Maryland, my guess is there's other states that fall into that category. We might be able to solve our own problem if we actually find out what that history is. I don't know who can answer that for us. To be honest, I would put that to our council and ask them specifically to look into that. It might be a little bit easier for them to do it because there would have had to have been some legal precedent and an acknowledgement, and it would have had to have been adapted at some point, and if it was 2009, that might be a great starting place, even if it's circa that, give or take a year or so. That might be interesting. And if we remember that it kind of might have made sense given that there was a major economic challenge in 2008. And so who knows what was really going on there. But I think that things sometimes have a life of their own. And if there is a precedent where this worked better for us, we might be able to make this very, very easy. With notwithstanding, but my suggestion is we start with something immediate and get an answer to that one, and then dig in. All right, hopefully that clarifies that thought process.
Yes. Yes, this is Ida. Thank you for that. Yes, Michael. Yes. Something to definitely, look into. And our lawyer actually, so funny, Jason has his hand up. Yep. Jason?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Jason. The tie to District 11 is built into state law. So if you're wondering the source, it's there. I can try to find the original bill from 1996, I think, and figure out a little more of the legislative history there. I think if we were to want for that to change, we would have to think about lobbying for a statutory change on that. I do think it's important to note that one of the reasons it might be beneficial to be tied to a district is because while you might think that a school with such specialized needs and activities would necessitate higher salaries, it could have been that it was getting left out of standard increases for school districts across Colorado, right? So, for example, Governor Polis's budget includes $46,000 for CSDB. And presumably that just mirrors the increases for District 11 and other across the board increases. So without being tied to something specific, you run the risk of being sort of left off as an afterthought when it's easier for politicians to sort of like think about one thing broadly than 88 different local school districts plus CSDB and others, right? So it's a bit of a safeguard to ensure that when there are increases like the one he's proposing, you're included in that. So not to say that that's the ideal situation. You would hope they could give individualized attention to different types of educational institutions, but they don't. The legislature doesn't always work the way you want it to, right? So it can be beneficial to be tied to something. I hope that made sense, and maybe what Tara was also kind of getting at.
Yes, this is Ida. Yes, thank you for that. Yep, Michael?
Thank you. Again, this is Michael speaking again. Jason, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I think it's going to be a bigger conversation and one that we'll have to have and have some strategy. It's not so much that being tied to the district is a problem, is that due to the challenges that we have to solve these challenges. We can't have these vacancies. We can't have attrition, and we can't be left behind in the manner we are. So that creativity that we're going to have to come with. What you said was extremely important. If this is state law that this was made, and understanding, and maybe even if we can find out exactly what that legislation looked like, we can talk about maybe if there's a ratification or something of that ilk. it doesn't change the fact that we're still in this place of great challenge, and so it falls upon this group to affect change one way or another. So the creative aspect, and this is where it goes into that other area that I think was mentioned, which is creative fundraising, creative financing. These were the two biggest areas of concern when we talked about the subcommittees in general, and really could occupy. If we spend that every day on this for a year, we could easily do that. Yeah, it isn't so much that being tied to the district is a problem. It's just that we're being faced with such enormous challenge that is affecting our ability to do the job that needs to be done. So no matter what, there has to be some change. It's just a matter of how creative we can get, and as well as you said, politicians amongst other can in that. And that's why we knew that this was going to be a crossover with the legislative group.
This is Ida. Thank you for that. Yes. Yes. So the wheels are turning. Yes. We're getting the machine going. We're starting. Yes. But unfortunately, we have to wrap up this committee meeting. We're already at that point. So I think, yes, we have to look at our different plans. Like all of our students here, also just one more point, are on IEPs. So that is a huge gap on how the school districts are keeping their IDEA money, because it is tied to the student, that per pupil, but maybe that would help us pay teachers, have that increase, maybe, looking into that, tapping into that, something to explore. But again, we're going to keep thinking about this, checking into it a lot more. Reach out to me, Tara, with any new ideas that you may have. Yeah, Tara?
Yeah. While I have you here, Beth, is our IDEA funding based on numbers of students?
Well, yes.
Kind of.
It's based,
Yes.
okay, sorry, this is Beth signing. So it's based on a formula. You would have to have a full understanding of the formula, and I don't have that as of yet. So I'm still doing some research, so trying to figure that part out. But the short answer is yes. Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Okay, well, this is Tara. Do you mean that we count our students as CSDB students, which means that our home district does not receive that funding?
Hmm.
I mean,
Well,
is it one or the other, or is it separate? I don't know. That's a question I'm unsure of.
and this is Beth signing. That's actually a really great question. I have to do some research. Yeah, that's really good. Oh, and it looks like, yes, George, go ahead.
Yeah, this is George speaking. I can only share with you what I have learned in the last year about a BOCES. If a BOCES receives IDEA funding or the funding that the state passes as well for students on IEPs, the district does not receive that.
Okay. Okay. So this is Ida. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. So I think we need to continue to think about this and get some clarification. Like, why are we struggling as far as, with the school districts, as far as dorms, the meals? I think we need to figure, all of that out. But this has been a really great meeting. I'm excited to keep this going. This is a really good start. This was technically our first committee meeting. Yeah. All right, perfect. So to wrap up, let's come back at 5. We'll do a roll call for the legislative committee. Okay, so you have a little bit of a break, just a few minutes break. Okay. All right, bye. Yep, see you all at 5. Okay, perfect. Bye. Perfect. Yes, thank you. Yep. Thanks, Beth.
Everyone has currently taken a break, and they'll be back in 10 minutes.
Hi there.
Sorry, here, Denver.
Hi, can you hear me?
Is that you, Tim?
Yes, we can hear you, Pete.
Okay, this is Ida. Hi, everyone. Yes, long time no see. Yes, so I know I just saw you a few minutes ago, like 10 minutes ago. Anyway, good to see you, Pete. So if
Good
we
to-
can go ahead with roll call.
This is Jackie speaking. Megan Clausen,
Sorry, now, yes, here, Denver.
Jessica Lee, Pete Lee,
Pete Lee here, Colorado Springs.
Michael Stone,
Michael Stone here in Boulder.
Dahlia Casillas, George Welsh, and Ida Wilding.
Here, Colorado Springs. Okay, thank you. This is Ida. Thank you. Very excited to start our legislative committee now. Tara, would you mind reviewing what we discussed? And just, yep, 1 second for the
Yep.
interpreter.
Okay. Yep. I just wanted to let you all know that I just got a text from George. He's driving right now. And it's possible that over the pass he's going to get disconnected briefly, but he will be joining again. So if he gets disconnected. So just so you all know.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so last month we talked about 4 potential areas of focus related to legislative. So those 4 things were lead K legislation. Second was teacher licensing requirements for specifically for ASL, and also talking about they may not require legislative change, but possibly could, addressing it with working together with CDE and their licensure department. Not sure if that would, not sure if that requires a legislative bill or not. So that was the second one. Third, let me see my list. Was about universal preschool and how that then applies to CSDB. And then the fourth one is talking about a current statute and how that relates to board representation requirements. Recently, the Finance Committee just talked about this fifth thing, the statute related to District 11 compensation, that pay scale connection for CSDB for licensed staff. So we have a total of 5 items. So we have not yet prioritized what or where we want to start. I'm hoping that we could maybe pick the top 1 or 2 things to have a little bit further discussion.
This is Ida. Yes, I agree. So I also do want to add, I just found out it seems that TBIs are not required to like implement Braille, like there's no law or anything related to their licensure that TVIs are to know Braille. So it's a gap, I believe, with TODs with their signing proficiencies, as well as TVIs with their ability to read and understand Braille. So, just something short, that maybe we can reach out to the licensure department, CD, start a conversation with them, to see if that's something that we can really, like you mentioned, Tara, if it needs to go through the legislation or not. So I think lead K, that's already in the works. I think that would be a priority. I think we're kind of behind the eight ball on that one. So I think that would be up there on our priority list, but the others are also related to teacher compensation, the board statute, the universal pre-K. So, I mean, that would at least be my thought as far as the lead K. What are your thoughts? Anyone? Michael?
Thank you. Michael speaking, and just to Pete specifically to catch you up, because this dominated almost 80-90% of the finance committee meeting that we just had. That staff compensation is going to have a very fine dotted line to the legislative side. Our council, Jason, chimed in, and we can chat about that later, but was specific to one of the challenges that we're having with staff compensation being tied to a district. We get in the habit of saying District 11, but I think we just being very specific to being tied to a district was adapted by state law, and it could be back as far as 1996 when that happened. We can talk about pros and cons at some point with this, but I think that at some point, in this committee, we're going to have to prioritize, but realizing that last one with staff compensation is going to have some very, very tight crossover between both subcommittees.
Yep, this is Ida. Yes, agreed. Yes, George, go ahead.
And this is George speaking. One piece that didn't get mentioned in the finance committee meeting as well about the being tied to a district, and please correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like we're always a year behind on that as well. And I recall having a conversation at one of our in-person board meetings,
Yep.
maybe last springs, where it's not only, I mean, that can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, but the real bad thing is our staff's always a year behind, when I think we all agree that our staff generally has to be more highly prepared and trained to support students who have needs like ours. So I just want to make sure that's part of the conversation as well.
Yeah. This is Ida. Yeah, so I think that is also a priority. I'm recognizing that is one, because we already started that in the previous one. So I think that should be high up on the priority list. Tara, were you going to say something?
Yes, this is Tara, just in response to George, and the question about being 1 year behind. Yes, we are 1 year behind District 11. So it means that whatever District 11 earns this year, school year, that will apply to CSDB next school year regularly. Yes.
And this is Ida. Yes. Pete, did you have your hand up? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I did. It would be helpful for me to understand a little bit of the background as to why we are tied to a district, and specifically to D11. What are the pros and cons of doing that? But I took my hand down, because that question is really dealing with the substance of the issue, and you're talking about prioritization. So I will defer my question, but those are the issues I'd like to understand. And are we legally tied to them? Is there something in statute or rule that ties us to the district? And I think maybe the reason for being tied to a district was to ensure that our employees were compensated at the same level as other similarly situated employees in the district. So I would want to be sure that if we decouple, that we have some sort of language in there to ensure that we compensate our employees at a level at least equal to the district that if we decouple, we want to still pay our employees what the district was paying. And anyway, I'm more into substance than priority, and I don't really have much of an opinion on priority. I would defer to the wisdom of Tara and people more knowledgeable about the significance of these issues.
Okay. And yeah, this is Ida. Yes. So Pete, you're absolutely right. We want to talk about, and that's what Jason, our attorney, he had explained to us that it is a statute that we are connected with District 11, and it's more of like a safety type of net for us, basically, to be attached. But yes, we are 1 year behind. We catch up the following year. So we are talking about in that committee, like additional compensation for teachers and staff because all of the students at CSDB are in IEP. So our staff have very specialized skills and need to be able to work with our students and the different populations. So yes, so we're trying to figure out different strategies as far as where that money would be coming from and how to ask that of the JBC. So yes, and that looks like Jason, you have something. Go ahead.
All right. So sorry, this is Jason. It usually takes me a minute because our computers aren't as used to Zoom as it is Microsoft Teams. So it's specifically tied to District 11 because it's geographically where the school is located, and that's what the law says. The bill that actually currently governs it was passed in 2014 to start applying in 2015-16. And it specifically says, as it's tied to the decision made by the district on January 1st of the previous year. So that's likely why we've been kind of 1 year behind ever since, unless there's something I'm not aware of. But it seems like that was, for whatever reason, built into the statute back in 2014 when they kind of updated that provision.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, Pete.
Thank you. This is Pete. Hey, Jason, could you give us a citation for that statute? I've got the red book, so I could look it up and actually read it.
Sure, it's 2280 106.5.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. Yes, Tara.
Yes, this is Tara. So I also have the school law book up in my office at work. So I also know where to find that and I can scan it and send it to you all so we can all see the precise language of that statute. I'm putting that on my to-do list now.
Okay. Okay. Great. And this is Ida. Yes, I'm wondering if that ties or maybe has an overlap to our focus on, yes, we're working on Lead K already in process, getting the legislators to back that. So also those two things, really have an impact. They kind of go together as far as the licensure for both TODs and TVIs is kind of aligned with that compensation, as far as being compensated for those specialized skills. So I'm wondering if we can somehow combine those two things into a top priority. I mean, I don't know. Tara?
This is Tara. I would agree with those identified priorities. I did mention before to the Finance Committee that I have a meeting with our lobbyist next Monday, November 10, to talk about where we are with Lead K and what we do for next steps. So I will have more information about that. I think for me, that is priority number one. For me.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
teacher licensure. I was hoping that Paul was going to be here tonight so we could pick his brain in terms of best strategies for connecting with the licensure department. Start with them to see, does this require legislation or not? So I can email Paul to get a contact for the CDE licensure department, and set up a meeting with them and potentially add signing proficiency to the TOD licensure.
And this is Ida. And I'm wondering also, we want to include that plan as far as recognizing that they pass, like if they're not passing those signing skills, like the enforcement of that, like if it's not like, the implementation piece, if that's missing, or how to enforce that, but also the TVIs as well, because if they're not proficient in Braille, what how do we approach that? And so, Michael, yeah, um, I've been meeting with Michael and Tara. So I wonder if there's a right time that we can talk more about that as well. Maybe come up with some talking points to bring both sides up as far as COD and TVI. So definitely asking that question. Yeah, Tara?
This is Tara. Absolutely. I know for TVIs, they have a monitoring system in place for that. And Tanny Anthony from the Blind Low Vision upper levels of CDE, she has a very, let's say, robust monitoring system in place where she knows every teacher in the state and for compliance, she follows up to see if they've met a requirement. I think that they have to meet the initial requirement. I think it's every 5 years or something like that. So she'll check in again with them at that point to make sure that they're maintaining those skills. I know she has a good system for
Okay.
monitoring statewide. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that's so important because so often we, set up something that we think looks good in law, and then there's no accountability, no monitoring.
Right.
So yeah, that would be absolutely critical for success. Another thing that I would mention is probably there needs to be some kind of, transition time, having a specific number of years to meet a requirement based on when their license renewal is. So things like that. But yeah, I would love it if the two of you would be willing to join in with me meeting with the licensure department and having conversation.
Oh yeah. Yes, this is Ida. I would not mind being part of that. Yes, Michael, you had something, didn't you?
Thank you, Michael. Speaking. One thing specific. Well, there's two parts to it. First, I think for ease, if there's a way to tie the licensure to lead K, and then kind of put the TVI aspect to the side, because Tara stated exactly what I was going to state with respect to that there is monitoring in place, and that maybe internally we can create our own standards as it relates to, we'll just use specifically Braille, and not confuse things, because Lead K is such an important legislation, and I think essential to this committee itself. With a dotted line to licensure with it, I have one question specific to that, which is there anywhere I haven't seen it anywhere in the Lead K language about specific requirements, licensure requirements for ASL proficiency, etc. Am I missing that?
And this is Ida. No, Lead K focuses on students and their language acquisition, academic knowledge and understanding based on benchmarks. It doesn't have anything to do with teachers. That was very separate. But the teachers, I mean, but of course they have to be skilled in ASL and fluent. I'm shocked, that we're able to provide licensures to these teachers without that. So pushing for that to be set up, just within the system. Mhm. And this is Ida, but thank you, yes, Michael, for, all of that. I think does tie back to licensures for teachers because they have to have the skills that overlaps with the K being implemented, making sure that that language is here. And I think that also connects next to that, the compensation for our teachers. Yes, Jason, did you have something?
Yeah, sorry, this is Jason again with the pause on the Zoom. I'm sorry. But I at the last board meeting during lunch, I think I said I would look into this idea of ASL licensure for teachers and what kind of state initiated obstacles are in the way there or are forcing us to take on burdens that the school can't handle. And I wasn't able to find anything about required testing for teachers there. So there are certainly other requirements, and there are state requirements for to be a licensed interpreter. But as for just the teacher requirements, I think that, based on my research, looked like something that you all added to board policy last year, presumably as a best practice in a way as to model the way that things should be. So in terms of reducing any kind of state imposed burdens on the ASL testing and licensure among staff, that's probably not, unless I'm missing something, that's probably not going to be something that the state can reduce the load. That's more of a board decision. And that's not to say the decision last year was right or wrong. I think it's just dependent on you all as to which way you want to go with it.
Yeah. Okay. And this is Ida. Thank you for that, Jason. Okay. Right. Yeah, I agree. All right. Uh, wait a minute. Everything. Yep. Tara. Yep. It's moving a little. Okay.
Yep, this is Tara. I do want to add for clarification what we're talking about. We did already internally put in place something for CSDB, but I think that what we're talking about is a statewide implementation requirement, rather, for all teachers of the deaf. To get a CDE licensure through the state of Colorado, to have this. And I think it's interesting. You're right. I think there's a lot of states that just don't. There is no requirement. And additionally, there are some teacher prep programs that require some level of proficiency, but there's many that don't.
Right. Yep. And this is Ida. Right. And usually they require a special education degree for those teachers, but that's it. That's supposed to cover everything. It doesn't cover the bye-bye specialist, the language, like education, all of those things are missing. Those are gaps in that overall licensure. Pete, did you have your hand up? Did you have a question or a comment? Did you have anything?
Um, yeah, I'm a little out of my league in these areas, but I would think that there would be other deaf and blind schools around the country that have wrestled with and hopefully maybe figured out a way to resolve these things. Do other states have requirements for, teachers of the deaf or blind to have ASL and Braille? I mean, is that you would think, but do we know that? Or are there any standards in other states? And it seems to me almost so basic and intuitive. How can you teach, without ASL or without Braille?
Yes. And this is Ida. Yeah. Again, really good question. Oh, Jason?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not familiar with all the states, just the just the Colorado issues we talked about last time. I just want to clarify, and here in Colorado, the requirements to have a special education specialist endorsement for deaf or hard of hearing specifically, it's a master's degree or higher degree in special education of deaf or hard of hearing students having completed an approved program for the preparation of special education specialists in the area of deaf, hard of hearing with a field experience requirement. And then third is sort of general competencies listed in the licensing section of the state rules. So that's the basics of what's required here. I wouldn't be surprised if that's sort of the floor in other states as well. That's some pretty common language. My guess is that and I can look into it more if you all want me to, but that other schools for the deaf and the blind do something similar to what you all chose to do last year, which is set separate rules above that floor for the population you work with to ensure that all your staff are sort of extra qualified and to sort of be a role model or a lead for the way that other districts or other schools in the state are doing it. So what we have in the state rules is the floor. What you've said is the higher expectation to meet the needs of your students. And I'm only guessing, having been in a few states that have done this, that it looks similar in those other states. The state sets a generic floor, not spending the time on differentiating among types of schools, and then it's up to the individual schools to set their own expectations.
Yes. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Yeah. So I see the two of you, Pete, and yeah, why don't you go first, Pete, then Michael?
Okay, thanks. This is Pete. Thanks, Jason. That's really helpful. So then I think the question that we might want to discuss is, do we want to set our higher standards in board policy, as we've talked about, or do we really want to have it in state law? If it's in board policy, we're sort of in charge of whether we make it more stringent or less stringent, whether we waive it for circumstances. If it's in state law, presumptively it sets a higher floor that we have to meet. So I'm just raising the question. I don't know which is the better way to do it. I think I'll lean towards putting in policy rather than in law, but I'm not smart enough to know that is really better.
And currently it is in your policy. The GBF policy is what specifies it. So if you were wanting to advocate for higher standards statewide, that would obviously need to be a legislative or rule change. But in terms of sort of codifying it in your own school board policies, it's already there. So the legislature could use that as a model for other schools, but you have it well established for yourselves.
Yeah, Pete. Mhm.
Yeah, as a follow-up on that, uh, do we what is the reason that we would want to apply the standard statewide? Are there teachers of the deaf and hard of hearing and or blind in other parts of the state who are not under our policies who are teaching um, these kids in remote locations?
Yes.
Now we
Yes.
would
Yes.
okay,
Yep.
you got that question. The answer is yes, they are, and we want to make sure that they're sufficiently qualified to be able to do it correctly. Who are they? Are they working for school systems? Are they private tutors? Who are these folks?
Yeah, this is Ida. So they're in the school district. They have special ed, different placements, and there's a shortage of teachers who know sign out there. So they may, have a deaf or hard of hearing student, or a blind student who knows Braille. They're just kind of under that general special ed. But I know, Michael, you've had your hand trying to go up a few times. Let me go over to you.
Thank you. Michael speaking. Actually, Pete, you led into what I was going to say. We've had extensive conversations on this subject, and Ida and Tara could speak very specific on this. And honestly, Ida could spend hours on this subject, and it might be helpful if we did a bit of a write up as to what is the need, why are we even having this conversation, and then internally we'll figure out how best to achieve that solution. The deficiencies and such, we've talked about the proficiencies and the standards that we adopted in over the past year. There's just significant challenges as to what we're dealing with, and we have resident experts, and there's a reason why we're doing this, and I think that will be very helpful to answer your questions that were actually perfectly stated as to what we do next. And I think therein lies our answer.
Yep. Yeah.
And
This is Ida. Yes, Michael, thank you for that.
Sure.
Oh,
yeah, sorry.
yeah, Michael,
just real quick, just to bring you up. When we talk about Braille, guys, just so you know, it's the many teachers for the visually impaired, and that we affectionately TVIs, that don't read Braille tactily. So they're teaching it to blind students that will only read it in a tactile manner. This is an internal problem that we can probably address, and as Tara pointed out, that Tammy, amongst other things, has some monitoring in it. But we could probably come up with something here. The ASL situation is far more profound, and will probably have I'd say is the majority of our focus for this particular committee. And if that's at all helpful, just trying to narrow everything down. We only have a certain amount of time moving forward this year to address these things. And if we really want to accomplish it, if we can combine as many of those areas that we have and narrow our focus, I think it'll become extremely helpful as we move forward.
oh yes, this is Ida. Thank you for that. Yep. Thanks, Michael, for that summary. Yes. George, I saw your hand up and then you're gone. Are you here? Are you still with us, George, or did we lose you? Yeah, I can't see. Oh,
I think we lost him. I think he disconnected.
I bet he's going over another pass.
I bet he's going over the pass.
Yep, he's a lot higher elevation than us right now, I bet. Okay, let's see. It doesn't look like I'll keep an eye out, see if he comes back. Okay, so yes. Yeah, so I'm guessing that our next steps would be to continue like figuring out after Tara has her meeting on Monday, our priority is the lead K, how to combine that. And again, the District 11 additional compensation for our teachers, that whole issue, how to get, keep that connection, but maybe getting additional compensation and licensure. Yeah, all of those things. So what else? Like, what else do we want to talk more about on those things? Tara, anything you want to add on any of those? Yeah, Tara, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Tara. Back to Michael, you mentioned about, in terms of why this is important, why we want something statewide is because the impact on all deaf kids within the state of Colorado. I mean, I'm not sure, but again, about the specific data and how many students are deaf statewide. I'm trying to get more data and more specifics about how many teachers of the deaf there are, how many interpreters are certified interpreters that we have, because there's also a lot of teachers that are working directly within public school systems. And now, they could work with a variety of students. Some students might be ASL users. Some students might be more oral, using spoken language. I taught in a public school for 5 years before I came to CSDB, and the challenge is that every year, those groups of students could be completely different. Some years you might have several signers. And some years you might only have one or two or not even. I mean, it runs the gamut. And I think for me, it doesn't matter. You should always be able to, for those students who use ASL, for direct instruction, those teachers need to be ready and able to have direct communication with those kids, regardless. And really the same then goes for TVIs. There might be some years that you have students, maybe just one Braille user. In other years, you'll have five, and some years, none. Doesn't matter. They need to be ready and competent and ready.
Yeah.
I think that's just a challenge, with all students is, those students that aren't at CSDB, they're missing that direct language, because there is no formal requirement for ASL proficiency for these teachers, and that has a profound impact. And yeah, I mean, there's many, many teachers and many students out there in public school districts.
And this is Ida. Yes, I completely agree. I find it ironic that we're required certified, pass everything for interpreters, very, very strict things. And it's very ironic that things don't apply to teachers of the deaf. So that just, yeah, doesn't make any sense to me because they're providing direct instruction to deaf, hard of hearing students, not through a quote unquote third party, whereas the third party, the interpreters, have very stringent, guidelines to get their certification. It's critical. And so again, I think it's just, I mean, our language is all visual. This is how we learn. And yeah, to really learn effectively, they have to have these high quality skills with these teachers. Yeah. Ironic. So, and well, also, as I'm doing my research, all of the things, my dissertation, as I look through research ASL, it benefits everyone. Hearing people, you always see, oh, the baby sign, or people can't express themselves, if they're still developing their speech, ASL and sign language is a benefit to all. There's no one is ever going to be harmed by learning ASL. It's just benefits everyone. And I guess my point is if a student, you know, like they should know sign, regardless of what Tara was saying, regardless of the student, they TOD should know sign, period. Mhm. I'm guessing that so need to develop like maybe something, teams to focus on like lead K, licensure, ASL skills, and then we can use other experts as well for the finance department, legal, all of that. Develop those teams. I mean, anybody want to add anything? Talk about that? We're just still looking for George to see if he's coming back. If he had anything additional to say, I don't know. Yeah, Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, Pete, with another question. Is there any desire to provide additional compensation to teachers who have acquired and are certified as having the skill? It seems to me that, in most trades, when people acquire higher skills, they get more compensation. And, certainly teachers of uh, deaf, hard of hearing kids or adults have to have specialized skills, and if they can establish a competency in ASL, are we going to urge that there be an additional compensation? In teaching, if you get a master's degree, you get a bump in pay. If you get a PhD, you get a bump in pay. There are certain things that trigger additional compensation. Um, so I'm just wondering if that's part of what we would be proposing for these teachers.
Yes. Yes, and yes. This is Ida. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, no, thank you. I was just addressing what Pete Lee said so well. we've never really talked about incentive compensation, have we? Tara, is that something that has ever come up?
Well, this is Ida. I do believe that we provide some type of like relocation type of incentive. Tara, can you talk more about that, those incentives?
Can you clarify?
Like
This is
extra,
Tara. Can you clarify your question?
like extra, like more compensation for different experience or something like that?
This is Tara. So, well, for those who meet their ASL proficiency requirements, is that what you mean? Is that the question?
Yes.
Michael, yes, that was, yes.
Well, so specific to CSDB, currently we don't provide additional compensation for meeting ASL proficiency requirements. I mean, I'd love to do that both for teachers as well as other staff. It's not only teachers that applies to, that we need them to be, as proficient as possible in communicating with our students. But I would love to, talk more about the possibility of doing that within CSDB. Now, in terms of other teachers of the deaf that work within public schools, I mean, they're under their district salary schedule. So I'm not sure how that works.
Mhm. Well, this is Ida. Okay, so my understanding is typically, like if you're teaching, like how can you teach deaf children if you don't know the language? How
Right.
are they giving a licensure out to these teachers to teach, in a different language? It's just not right. And well, oh, sorry. I just want to hold this for 1 second because it looks like Jason put something in the chat that mentions October 2024 that with IEPs K-12, the numbers, yeah, 27 deaf and blind school, deaf blindness. They're giving the numbers of I guess there's more categories, but multiple disability group as well, giving some numbers there. So it looks like more in pre-K and then third through fifth grade. So yes, thank you for that information that you put in the chat there. It's critical. Like we have to know, like what, there's 1,300 students who are deaf, blind around Colorado. Where are they? Where are they? Deaf or blind? Like where are they in Colorado? Yes. So yes, so we definitely need to do more, to get them to come here if they're not being served in their home districts, because again, this is where it should be a hub and we are the experts here. Okay. So yes, I'm just copying and pasting that information from the chat really quick. Yeah, Tara.
This is Tara. Thank you, George. And I'm assuming that those numbers are specific to deaf and then blind. Does that include only those who are identified as having that as a primary disability? So meaning like, does that also include students who are deaf but also have autism or deaf and also have physical impairments?
Yeah, read the next paragraph.
Yeah, I didn't mean to this is Jason. I didn't mean to derail anything. I was just trying to provide some context for a question earlier about how many kids we're talking about, and the answer is a lot of kids. So these numbers don't necessarily, because school districts don't always report things exactly the same, even though they're supposed to, right? So in theory, it should include some kids who, let's say, have autism as a primary area of eligibility, and then hearing impairment as a secondary area. It often depends whether the school district categorizes them as multiple disabilities or whether they're just categorizing a first and second area of eligibility. So what I provide here is very likely an undercount of the total numbers. My basic point was in saying 27 deaf and blind, 1,096 hearing impairment, and 298 visual impairment. That's not pre-K. That's not kids who are homeschooled or private schooled who might be in the public schools if they were to receive better services, or if they could be at a place like CSDB. And it may also, I think, to Tara's point that she was trying to make, may also not include those students who have an intellectual disability or something as their primary eligibility. But the point I was just trying to make was to support with some additional information was to support that there are many students outside of CSDB who could use the same high level of standards or the types of services that CSDB can provide.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tara.
This is Tara. And I think also that doesn't include, I mean, some students are not on IEPs. They may have 504s instead. So I see those numbers that you shared as really minimal. I think there's many more than that. Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. And this is Ida. I completely agree. And well, I'm wondering how often, the multiple disability, maybe if a student is language surprised, they're considered like dumb and they don't know anything, but it's truly just language deprivation and they don't have a way to share how smart they are because they don't have the language. So I am curious if those numbers as far as like deaf plus, multiple disabilities would go down if these kids had language from the start. So thank you for those numbers, Jason. I really appreciate it. Any more questions, any more items of discussion, or are we ready to wrap this up? Yeah. Oh, Tara, go ahead.
This is Tara. I see George is back.
Oh,
I'm
is
not
he?
sure if he wants
George,
to share his comment that he had his hand raised for before he disconnected, going over the past.
George, come on back. Come on back.
Yeah,
You have
I'm
something to
with
say?
you. I'm with you, and you might lose me in a minute again because now I'm heading between Salida and Canyon.
Perfect.
Yeah, I had my hand up, and Pete and Michael were talking about the same thing. As there are many standards in Colorado already for about literacy, about teachers who teach kids literacy, how to read and write, need to achieve a certain
Yep.
standard in order to continue to hold their license. How even administrators of achieve a minimum standard for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same as everyone else. It doesn't matter where the kid is in the state if they need to become literate to do an ASL or Braille or whatever the strategy is. That they ought to be taught by individuals who meet that standard. So I just wanted to share my agreement with that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And this is Ida. Yes. Thank you for that, George. Yep. I think we're all in agreement on that for sure. We're all on the same page as far as that goes. It just takes baby steps and action for us to do this. It's been a great discussion. Thank you so much. Yes, everyone sharing their knowledge. Jason, thank you for that. And Tara, anything you want to add before we wrap up? We're good.
No.
Okay. All right then. Thank you all so very much for tonight. I feel like it was very productive, really good meeting for both committees, Legislative Committee and Finance Committee. Thank you all so much for your contribution, and I will see you in 2 weeks. All right, bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. And thank you to both of you, sure, of course.
Thanks, Lisa.
Have a great night.
You too.
All right. Thank you, Ruben. Enjoy your
See you.
night.
You too.
Thank you.